Dr. Saracen pressed her face against the cold glass of the observation deck, watching the last Centauri entertainment probe drift lazily through Earth's upper atmosphere. Somewhere in the depths of space, millions of alien viewers were probably laughing at the footage it was collecting, another day of human misery for their twisted amusement. Still makes you sick, doesn't it? Sarah turned to see Commander Jake Morrison approaching, his weathered face grim in the blue light of the monitors surrounding them. Behind him, the massive underground facility buzzed with activity. Project Gaia had been humanity's best-kept secret for 15 years, and today was the day they would finally reveal what they'd been building. 23 years, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. 23 years they've been broadcasting our pain to the galaxy like we're some kind of cosmic joke. Jake nodded. I remember when they first showed up. I was just a kid, thought it was the coolest thing ever, real aliens. My parents were so excited, said it meant we weren't alone in the universe. He laughed bitterly. Turns out we were right. We weren't alone. We were just the entertainment. The Centauri had arrived in 2089 with great fanfare, their massive ships appearing in Earth's sky like floating cities of crystal and light. World leaders had prepared grand welcoming ceremonies, scientists had worked around the clock to establish communication, and ordinary people had gathered in the streets to witness humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. The aliens had been polite at first. They'd shared basic translation technology, explained that they represented a vast galactic empire, and expressed interest in learning about human culture. But as the months passed, their true intentions became clear. They weren't here to welcome humanity into the galactic community. They were here to turn us into a show. The Centauri Reality Network, they called it. Earth, the ultimate survival show. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Centauri surveillance drones captured every aspect of human life and broadcast it across their empire. Wars, natural disasters, political scandals, personal tragedies, nothing was off limits. The more dramatic and painful, the higher the ratings. They could have helped. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's. They had clean energy that could have ended our climate crisis overnight, medical advances that could have cured every disease, transportation systems that could have connected the world without pollution. Instead, they kept it all to themselves and watched us struggle. They think we're animals, Sarah said, pulling up a holographic display showing Centauri's social media feeds. Translated comments scrolled past. Look at the mud crawlers fight over their poison water. I bet the northern continent falls within 10 rotations. These creatures are so primitive, they still burn fossil fuels. Let them think that, Jake said with a cold smile. It's been our greatest advantage. Deep beneath the Colorado mountains, Project Gaia had been humanity's response to becoming unwilling reality TV stars. While the world above continued its struggles, wars still fought, governments still collapsed, climate change still ravaged ecosystems, the brightest minds from every nation had been secretly working together on something the Centauri never saw coming. Sarah walked over to the main control console, where dozens of technicians were running final system checks. The centerpiece of the room was a massive three-dimensional hologram of Earth, covered in thousands of glowing points of light. Each light represented a component of their weapon system, hidden in plain sight across the planet. Dr. Chen called out Lieutenant Maria Santos from her station. We're getting confirmation from all sectors. The mass drivers are online, the fusion cores are at full capacity, and the gravitational field generators are synchronized. Sarah nodded. What about the Centauri monitoring systems? Still completely oblivious, Santos replied with satisfaction. As far as their sensors can tell, those are just geothermal power plants, earthquake research stations, and deep mining operations. They have no idea we've been building weapons. The genius of Project Gaia wasn't just in its technology, it was in its deception. Every component had been disguised as something mundane and expected. The massive electromagnetic launchers looked like subway tunnels. The fusion reactors were hidden inside what appeared to be standard power plants. The gravitational manipulation devices were disguised as earthquake monitoring stations. To the Centauri's scanners, Earth looked exactly like what they expected, a dying planet full of primitive creatures scratching out a living with outdated technology. But beneath the surface, humanity had been preparing for war. They taught us everything we needed to know, Sarah said, thinking back to her early days on the project. Every time they scanned us, every probe they sent down, every piece of their tech that accidentally crashed, we learned from it all. The first breakthrough had come in 2095, when a Centauri atmospheric monitor had malfunctioned and crashed in the Amazon rainforest. Brazilian scientists had managed to recover it before the aliens could retrieve it, and within hours it was on its way to the newly established Project Gaia facility. That single device had revealed the principles behind Centauri quantum field manipulation, opening up possibilities that human science had never imagined. Direct hit, Santos reported. The flagship is disabled. But Sarah wasn't finished. Dr. Nakamura, activate the gravitational field generators. Let's show them what a primitive planet can really do. Hidden installations across Earth began to emit synchronized gravitational waves, turning the planet itself into a massive weapon. The technique was something humanity had developed by studying Centauri planetary engineering technology, but applied in a way the aliens had never imagined. Earth began to move. Not in its orbit that would have been catastrophic for all life on the surface. Instead, the planet began to generate focused gravitational waves that could be directed like a weapon. The effect on the Centauri ships was immediate and devastating. Their carefully maintained positions became impossible to hold as gravity itself became humanity's ally. Impossible, came the panic transmission from the Centauri fleet commander. Primitives cannot manipulate gravitational fields. Your technology is centuries behind ours. You're right, Sarah replied calmly. Our original technology was centuries behind yours. But we had something you didn't, the motivation to catch up. And while you were busy being entertained by our surface struggles, we were building the most advanced planetary defense system in the galaxy. More Centauri ships tried to escape, but the gravitational waves were inescapable at close range. Their own quantum drives, dependent on precise gravitational calculations, became useless as Earth twisted space-time around them. You want to know what we learned from watching your empire? Sarah continued. We learned that you're weak. You've become so dependent on your technological superiority that you've forgotten how to fight. You've become soft, sitting in your crystal cities and watching others struggle while you do nothing. The largest Centauri battleship tried to bring its main weapons to bear on Earth, but its targeting systems couldn't lock onto a planet that was actively manipulating local spacetime. Its energy beams bent away harmlessly, dispersed by gravitational lensing effects. We also learned something else, Sarah said, her voice growing colder. We learned that you're cowards. 23 years you've had the power to help us solve our problems, our climate crisis, our energy needs, our diseases. You could have made Earth a paradise. Instead, you chose to watch us suffer because it was more entertaining. She gestured to Dr. Nakamura, who began the final phase of their attack. So we decided to turn our entire planet into a weapon. Every geothermal plant you ignored is actually a fusion-powered mass driver. Every earthquake monitoring station is a gravitational field generator. Every mining operation is a component in a planetary defense grid that spans all 7 continents and both poles. The remaining Centauri ships found themselves caught in an increasingly powerful gravitational web, unable to escape or mount an effective counterattack. Their superior technology meant nothing when the very fabric of spacetime was being used against them. This is impossible, the fleet commander transmitted again. No primitive species has ever developed planetary-scale weaponry. That's because no primitive species has ever been motivated by 23 years of galactic humiliation, Sarah replied. You turned us into your entertainment, but you also gave us a common enemy. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth worked together toward a single goal, making sure you would never laugh at us again. The gravitational waves intensified, and several smaller Centauri vessels began to break apart under the stress. Their crews abandoned ship and escape pods, but even those were caught in Earth's gravitational net. You called us mud crawlers, Sarah continued relentlessly. You said we didn't deserve to join the galactic community. You broadcast our worst moments to 50 billion viewers for their amusement. Her voice became deadly quiet. Well, here's some entertainment for them. She nodded to Jake, who activated the final component of their weapons system. Across Earth, every installation began working in perfect harmony, turning the planet into something the galaxy had never seen before, a living weapon capable of projecting its power across interplanetary distances. The effect was spectacular. Earth began to glow with barely contained energy as its gravitational field became visible, creating aurora-like displays in space around the planet. The Centauri ships, caught in this field, were completely helpless. "Now," Sarah said, "let's discuss terms. You're going to do several things for us. First, you're going to use your broadcasting network to send a message to every civilization in your empire. You're going to tell them that humanity is not to be exploited, mocked, or treated as entertainment ever again." The fleet commander's response was weak and defeated. "The Empire will never agree to." Second, Sarah interrupted, "You're going to share your clean energy technology, your medical advances, and your environmental restoration techniques with Earth. Not as payment, not as trade, as reparations for 23 years of psychological torture. The High Council will never." Third, Sarah continued mercilessly, "You're going to establish a formal embassy on Earth and recognize humanity as an equal member of the galactic community. With full voting rights and territorial sovereignty." She paused, letting the weight of her demands sink in. "And if you refuse any of these terms, we're going to demonstrate to the entire galaxy what happens when a planet decides to defend itself. Your entertainment network has 50 billion viewers, right? Let's give them a show they'll never forget." More accidents had followed over the years. A damaged surveillance drone in the Sahara Desert. A malfunctioning gravity projector that fell from orbit into the Pacific Ocean. Each incident had been carefully orchestrated by Gaia operatives, made to look like random equipment failures while secretly providing humanity with priceless alien technology to reverse engineer. "Status report on the planetary defense grid?" Jake asked. "All systems operational," replied Dr. Kim Nakamura from the weapons console. "We have confirmation from every continent. The Australian Outback installations are ready, the Sahara array is online, the Siberian complex is at full power, and even the Antarctica stations are reporting green across the board." Sarah smiled grimly. The Centauri had laughed when humans tried to establish research stations in the world's most inhospitable places. "Look at them," the alien commentators had said, "too stupid to realize they're wasting resources in wastelands." They never suspected that those research stations were actually weapon emplacements, powered by fusion reactors and connected by a global quantum communication network. "What's our current visitor count?" Sarah asked, pulling up the orbital tracking display. 73 Centauri entertainment vessels in various orbits around Earth, Santos reported. The flagship Eternal Glory is maintaining position at the L1 Lagrange point, probably getting ready for tonight's Primitive Hour broadcast. The Eternal Glory was the crown jewel of the Centauri entertainment fleet, a massive vessel the size of Manhattan, equipped with the most advanced broadcasting technology in their empire. It was from there that the Empire's most popular shows were transmitted across thousands of star systems, reaching an estimated audience of over 50 billion Centauri citizens. Tonight's show was supposed to be special. Sarah had intercepted their communications and knew they were planning a Greatest Disasters of Earth marathon, featuring footage of humanity's worst moments over the past 2 decades. Famines, wars, natural disasters, economic collapses, all set to upbeat Centauri music and accompanied by mocking commentary. "They have no idea," Jake said, reading her thoughts. "All these years, they've been so focused on our surface problems that they never looked deeper. That had been humanity's salvation. While the Centauri cameras captured every war, every protest, every sign of struggle on Earth's surface, they never bothered to skin deep underground. Why would they? The humans were clearly too primitive to build anything interesting down there. The deepest they ever looked was a few hundred meters, just enough to monitor for nuclear weapons that might accidentally damage their entertainment value. They never saw the massive construction projects taking place kilometers below their cameras. They never detected the global network of tunnels connecting every continent. They never realized that those primitive humans had spent 2 decades building something that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy." Dr. Chen called Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the communications station. We're receiving the final confirmations from the other world leaders. Everyone's ready. Sarah nodded and walked to the central command platform. Around her, hundreds of the world's best scientists and engineers worked at their stations, preparing to unleash humanity's greatest creation. Representatives from every nation on Earth were present, all working together for the first time in human history. The Zentari had intended to divide them with their broadcasts, to encourage conflict and drama for better ratings. Instead, they had united humanity against a common enemy. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah announced, her voice carrying across the massive facility. "For 23 years, we have been unwilling participants in an alien entertainment empire. We have been mocked, exploited, and treated as lesser beings for the amusement of creatures who see us as nothing more than animals in a zoo." The room fell silent, all attention focused on her words. "Today, that ends. Today, we show the galaxy that Earth is not a toy to be played with. Today, we show the Zentari Empire what happens when you underestimate humanity." She turned to Jake. "Commander Morrison, are all defensive systems online?" "Affirmative, Dr. Chen. Planetary shield generators are at full power, and all population centers are secured." "Dr. Nakamura, weapon system status?" "All mass drivers loaded and targeted. Fusion cores at maximum output. Gravitational field manipulators ready for planetary acceleration." Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment that would either liberate humanity or doom them all. But she felt no fear, only a cold determination that had been building for decades. "Dr. Santos, open a communication channel to the Zentari fleet. All frequencies, maximum power. I want every ship in the system to hear this." "Channel open, Dr. Chen." Sarah stepped forward, knowing that her words were about to be heard by alien beings across the solar system. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking for the United Earth Defense Coalition. For 23 years, you have treated our planet as your personal entertainment. You have broadcast our suffering, mocked our struggles, and refused to help when you had the power to do so." She paused, letting her words sink in across the vacuum of space. "You called us primitive. You called us worthless. You said we didn't deserve to join the galactic community." Her voice grew harder. "You were wrong about us. And now you're going to learn exactly how wrong." On the main display, Sarah could see the Zentari ships beginning to react. Their energy signatures were spiking as they powered up weapons and shields, probably thinking this was some kind of primitive human bluff. "You see, while you were busy laughing at us, we were learning from you. Every probe you sent, every scanner you used, every piece of technology you carelessly left behind, we studied it all. We reverse-engineered your quantum drives, your energy systems, your gravitational manipulators. And then we did something you never expected." Sarah's smile was cold as winter. "We made them better." She turned to Dr. Nakamura. "Activate the planetary mass drivers. Target the Zentari flagship." Across the globe, installations that had masqueraded as geothermal plants and mining operations revealed their true nature. Massive electromagnetic launchers, each 1 kilometers long and powered by fusion reactors, began to charge. The Zentari sensors finally detected the energy buildup, but it was far too late. Firing in 3, 2, 1, fire. The mass drivers discharged simultaneously, launching projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed directly at the Zentari fleet. But these weren't ordinary projectiles. Each one was made from materials reverse-engineered from Zentari technology, designed to penetrate their shields and disrupt their quantum field generators. The first salvo struck the Eternal Glory before its crew could react. The massive entertainment vessel's shields flared and collapsed, and the ship itself began to list as its gravitational systems failed. Sarah gestured, and Earth's gravitational field began to pulse rhythmically, sending waves of distorted space-time rippling outward. Any civilization with the technology to detect gravitational anomalies would see it a clear demonstration of Earth's new capabilities. "You see," Sarah explained as the Zentari ships struggled helplessly in her planet's grip, "while you were busy laughing at our primitive problems, we were solving them. Climate change? Our fusion reactors produce more clean energy than our entire civilization can use. Resource scarcity? Our asteroid mining operations are already harvesting more metals than we need. Overpopulation? We've got underground cities that could house billions. She smiled coldly. The only problem we couldn't solve on our own was getting rid of the alien parasites who were exploiting us for entertainment. But we've figured that out too. The display screens around the command center showed readings from across the galaxy. Other civilizations were detecting Earth's gravitational emissions and responding with everything from curiosity to alarm. The Zentari Empire's communications networks were buzzing with activity as news of humanity's demonstration spread. The whole galaxy is watching now, Sarah observed. Not because you're broadcasting our pain, but because we're broadcasting our strength. Every advanced civilization out there just learned that humanity is not to be underestimated. The Zentari fleet commander's voice was barely above a whisper when he responded. What are you? Sarah's smile was fierce and proud. We're exactly what you always said we were, the products of a harsh world that forced us to become strong. The difference is, now we're strong enough to fight back. She turned to her team. Dr. Nakamura, maintain gravitational containment on the fleet but reduce intensity to non-lethal levels. Dr. Santos, open diplomatic channels with Zentari High Command. Commander Morrison, prepare our first official demand for reparations. As her orders were carried out, Sarah looked up at the main display showing Earth from space. Her planet, humanity's home, was glowing like a star, its gravitational field visible as sheets of aurora-like energy. It was beautiful and terrible, a clear message to the galaxy that Earth was no longer prey. You know what the best part is, she said to Jake, who was coordinating with the various world leaders watching from secure locations around the globe. They're going to help us fix every problem they used to laugh about. Climate change, poverty, disease, all of it's going to be history within a decade. Jake nodded, his expression mixing satisfaction with amazement. Hard to believe we actually pulled it off. 23 years of planning, and it worked perfectly. It worked because they never respected us enough to take us seriously, Sarah replied. They saw our surface struggles and assumed that was all we were capable of. They never imagined we could think on a planetary scale. The communications station chimed with an incoming message from Zentari High Command. Sarah listened as their Supreme Chancellor, speaking from a throne room thousands of light years away, formally agreed to all of humanity's demands. The speed of their capitulation proved what Sarah had always suspected: the Zentari Empire was built on intimidation and technological superiority, not actual strength. When faced with an opponent who could match their technology and exceed their determination, they folded immediately. One more thing, Sarah said into the communications array, addressing not just the Zentari but any civilization that might be listening. Earth is now establishing its own interstellar communication network. Any species interested in genuine diplomatic relations, based on mutual respect rather than exploitation, is welcome to make contact through proper channels. She paused, her voice carrying across the cosmos. But any civilization that thinks humanity looks like easy prey should take a long, careful look at what we just did to the Zentari Empire. We turned our entire planet into a weapon, and we did it while you were all laughing at us. As the immediate crisis passed and the Zentari ships limped away under escort, Sarah allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. In a few hours, the first Zentari technology transfers would begin. Within days, Earth would have clean energy systems that could support a population 10 times larger than its current size. Within months, humanity would take its first steps as true citizens of the galactic community. But most importantly, the galaxy now knew that Earth was not a victim to be exploited. Humanity had proven that even a primitive species could become a force to be reckoned with when pushed too far. The age of being entertainment was over. The age of being equals had begun. Sarah looked around the command center, at the faces of scientists and engineers from every nation on Earth who had worked together to achieve the impossible. Tomorrow, their planet would begin its transformation from a struggling world to a galactic power. But tonight, they could simply enjoy the satisfaction of knowing that no one would ever mock their home again. So, Jake said with a grin, "What do we do for an encore?" Sarah smiled back, her eyes already looking toward the stars. Oh, I have a few ideas. After all, we've got an entire galaxy to explore now as equals, not as entertainment. Outside, Earth continued to glow with the power of its new weapons, a beautiful and terrible reminder to the cosmos that humanity had finally found its strength. The planet that had once been called primitive and worthless was now the most feared and respected world in the galaxy. They had mocked Earth for being a dying world full of struggling creatures. Humanity had turned the dying world into the most powerful weapon the galaxy had ever seen. And in the depths of space, 50 billion Centauri citizens watched their entertainment network broadcast a very different kind of show, the rise of a species that would never again be anyone's victim. You remember that everyone human or alien is somebody's child, Jake said finally. Somebody loves them, somebody would miss them if they were gone. When you remember that, it becomes harder to hurt them. Carlos nodded solemnly, then turned back to the window as their new world grew larger below. Jake Morrison had been many things: soldier, prisoner, weapon, ghost. Now, perhaps, he could learn to be something else, a guardian who protected not through violence but through wisdom, a veteran who used his scars to heal rather than harm. The war was over. The legend would fade. But the man who had walked through hell might yet find his way back to the light, one careful step at a time. As the new dawn touched down on Haven's surface, Jake Morrison began the longest journey of his life, the journey home to his own humanity. Dr. Sarachin stood in the crystal spire that had once been the Centauri Embassy's private broadcast center, now converted into Earth's first interstellar diplomatic complex. Through the transparent walls, she could see the transformed landscape of what used to be the Colorado facility. Where once there had been hidden weapons and secret tunnels, now gleaming towers of Centauri-human hybrid technology reached toward the sky. The changes had been swift and dramatic. True to their word, the Centauri had delivered on every promise. Fusion reactors based on their quantum containment systems now powered entire continents with zero emissions. Medical centers equipped with their cellular regeneration technology had eliminated most diseases within weeks. The atmospheric processors they provided were already reversing decades of climate damage, and the oceans were cleaner than they'd been in over a century. But the most profound change wasn't technological, it was psychological. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Santos, now serving as Earth's first director of alien relations, were receiving the daily status reports from our new monitoring stations. Sarah nodded, reviewing the data streams on her holographic display. Humanity had wasted no time establishing their own surveillance network throughout the solar system. If they were going to be part of the galactic community, they would never again be caught off guard. "What's the word from the Proxima system?" she asked. "The hegemony is still requesting a formal audience," Santos replied. "They're the third major power to ask for direct diplomatic contact this week." Sarah smiled. 6 months ago, humanity had been a joke to the galaxy. Now they were the most sought-after allies in known space. Word of Earth's planetary weapon system had spread quickly, and every major civilization wanted to either befriend or carefully assess the species that had humiliated the mighty Centauri Empire. "Any word from the exploration teams?" "Dr. Patel's group reached the Kepler 442 system yesterday," Santos reported. "They've confirmed 3 potentially habitable worlds. The locals are eager to cooperate." That was an understatement. Every species humanity encountered now treated them with a mixture of respect and wariness. The galaxy had learned that underestimating Earth was a dangerous mistake. Commander Morrison entered the chamber, his face bearing the satisfied expression of someone who had just concluded successful negotiations. "The Andorian Trade Federation has agreed to our terms," he announced. "Full technology exchange, mutual defense pact, and most importantly, no surveillance rights in our territory without explicit permission." "Excellent," Sarah said. "That brings us to 15 formal allies and 37 trade partnerships. Not bad for a species that was too primitive to matter." The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The Centauri's contempt had been humanity's greatest gift. By dismissing Earth as worthless entertainment, they had given humanity the time and motivation to develop weapons that now made them one of the most formidable powers in the galaxy. "Dr. Chen," Santos said, her voice taking on a more serious tone, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Centauri High Council. They're requesting an emergency session. Sarah's expression hardened. What kind of emergency? The main display flickered to life, showing the familiar crystalline features of Chancellor Vextar, the Zentari leader who had been forced to negotiate Earth's terms 6 months earlier. His usual arrogance had been replaced by something Sarah had never seen in a Zentari before: fear. Dr. Chen, he began without preamble, we require your assistance. Sarah raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I want to make sure I heard correctly. The Devourer fleet has emerged from the galactic core, Vextar continued, his voice strained. They're moving toward the Outer Rim territories. Our projections show they'll reach Centauri space within 2 galactic rotations. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She'd heard whispers of the Devourers, an ancient machine civilization that periodically emerged from the galaxy's center to consume entire star systems. Most species treated them as legend, but the terror in Vextar's eyes suggested otherwise. What does this have to do with us? She asked, though she already suspected the answer. Your planetary defense system, Vextar said. The gravitational manipulation technology you developed, it's the only known counter to devourer harvesting techniques. We need Earth's help. Sarah looked around the room at her team. The same people who had spent decades planning revenge against the Zentari were now being asked to save them. The irony was almost too perfect. Let me understand this correctly, Sarah said slowly. For 23 years, you broadcast our suffering to the galaxy as entertainment. You refused to share technology that could have saved millions of lives. You treated us like animals in a zoo. She paused. And now you want us to risk our lives to save you? The Devourers don't distinguish between species, Vextar said desperately. If they're not stopped, they'll consume everything in their path. Including Earth. Sarah considered this. Show me the threat assessment. The display changed to show a tactical overview of the galaxy. From the bright core, a dark mass was spreading outward like an infection, consuming star systems as it advanced. The scale was staggering, hundreds of civilizations were directly in its path. How long do we have? Morrison asked. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach the Outer Rim in 18 months, Vextar replied. The Terran system lies directly in their projected path. Sarah studied the data, her scientific mind already analyzing possibilities. What makes you think our gravitational weapons can stop them? The Devourers use quantum harvesting to strip energy from entire stars, Vextar explained. The process requires precise gravitational fields to contain the stellar material. Your weapons could disrupt those fields, making harvesting impossible. But it would require multiple planets working in coordination, Sarah realized. Earth alone wouldn't be enough. Precisely, Vextar said. We're proposing a galactic alliance. Every major civilization contributing their planetary defense systems to create a unified network. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, weighing the implications. This was the choice she'd always known would come eventually, whether humanity would use their newfound power for pure self-interest or for the greater good of the galaxy. What are you offering in return? She asked finally. Everything, Vextar said without hesitation. Full access to our archives, complete technological sharing, permanent seats on the Galactic Council for Earth representatives. You would become equal partners in governing galactic civilization. Equal partners, Sarah repeated. 6 months ago, you wouldn't have considered us worthy of joining your entertainment network's audience. Now you want us as partners? 6 months ago, we were fools, Vextar admitted. We let our arrogance blind us to your potential. The entire galaxy learned from that mistake. Sarah looked at her team again. She could see the same thought in all their eyes. This was what they'd really been fighting for. Not just revenge against the Zentari, but recognition as equals in the cosmic community. We'll need guarantees, she said. Binding agreements that can't be revoked once the crisis passes. Done. And reparations for the civilizations that were ignored or exploited while you were focused on entertainment. Agreed. And humanity gets to lead the defensive coordination. If we're risking our planet to save the galaxy, we do it our way. Vextar hesitated only briefly. Agreed. Sarah turned to her team. Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we're about to find out if turning a planet into a weapon was just the beginning of what humanity can accomplish. She turned back to the display. Chancellor Vextar, you have Earth's cooperation. But understand this, we're not doing this to save the Zentari Empire. We're doing this because it's the right thing to do. Something you never bothered to learn. As the communication ended, Sarah looked out at the transformed landscape of Earth. In 18 months, their planet would either be part of the greatest defensive alliance in galactic history, or it would be consumed by forces older than civilization itself. But humanity had already proven one thing to the galaxy: they were far more than anyone had imagined. They'd turned their pain into strength, their struggles into weapons, and their planet into a force that even the mighty Zentari respected. Now they would discover if that was enough to save not just themselves, but the entire galaxy from an ancient evil. The species that had once been mocked as primitive entertainment was about to become the galaxy's last hope. And Sarah Chen had never been more proud to be human. The war room beneath Geneva hummed with activity as representatives from 47 different species worked side by side, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and translated speech. Sarah stood at the center of it all, studying the three-dimensional battle map that showed the Devourer fleet's relentless advance toward the Outer Rim. "Status report," she called out, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had become the de facto commander of the largest military alliance in galactic history. "Kepler 438 system has fallen," reported Admiral Gentera, a crystalline being from the Nexus Coalition. "The Devourers stripped both stars completely. The harvesting process took less than 6 hours." Sarah nodded grimly. That was 3 systems lost in the past week, each one bringing the ancient enemy closer to the heavily populated Outer Rim territories. But they weren't just advancing randomly, there was a pattern to their movement that had taken her months to recognize. "They're not just harvesting energy," she said, pointing to the tactical display. "Look at the systems they're choosing. Every one has unique gravitational properties, binary pulsars, neutron star clusters, systems with unusual orbital mechanics." Dr. Nakamura, now serving as Earth's chief scientific advisor to the Alliance, leaned forward. "You think they're building something?" "I think they're preparing for something," Sarah corrected. "Commander Santos, what's the status on the planetary defense grid?" 73 worlds now have operational gravitational field generators based on our designs," Santos replied. "The Zentari have retrofitted their core worlds, the hegemony has fortified their border systems, and even the isolationist Void Walkers have agreed to participate." It had been humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement. In just over a year, they'd convinced dozens of species to work together in ways that had never been attempted before. The key had been sharing Earth's gravitational manipulation technology freely, proving that humanity's intentions were genuinely defensive rather than expansionist. "Any word from the deep space reconnaissance teams?" Sarah asked. "Captain Rodriguez checked in from the Vanguard 3 hours ago," Santos reported. "They're maintaining observation of the main Devourer fleet from a safe distance. The enemy formation is massive." Sarah pulled up the latest reconnaissance data, and even though she'd seen it before, the scope of the threat still made her breath catch. The Devourer fleet wasn't just a collection of ships, it was a mobile civilization, with constructs the size of small moons and energy signatures that dwarfed entire star systems. "Ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Patel from the communications station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the forward defensive line. It's Admiral Morrison." The main display switched to show Jake's weathered face, but now he wore the insignia of the Alliance's first human fleet commander. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of the massive hybrid vessel that had become the flagship of their combined forces. "Sarah," Jake said without preamble, "we have a problem. The Devourers aren't following our projected course." "What do you mean?" "They've changed direction. Instead of heading toward the Zentari core worlds, they're moving toward the Sagittarius arm directly toward Earth." Sarah felt the room's attention focus on her. In the months since the Alliance had formed, humanity had become the de facto leaders of the defensive effort, but they'd always assumed the Devourers would target the more established galactic powers first. "How long do we have?" she asked. "At their current speed, They'll reach the outer edge of our solar system in 6 weeks, Jake replied. Sarah, they're not just coming for us, they're coming for us first. We think they know about the gravitational weapon system. The implications hit her immediately. If the Devourers understood the threat that Earth's planetary defense grid posed to their harvesting operations, they would prioritize eliminating it before facing the rest of the Alliance. Jake, I need you to coordinate with the Alliance fleet, Sarah said. Establish a defensive perimeter at the asteroid belt. We'll need to buy time for the other systems to coordinate their gravitational fields. Already on it, Jake replied. But Sarah, there's something else. We've been analyzing the energy patterns from their previous harvesting operations. I think I know what they're really after. What do you mean? They're not just taking stellar energy, Jake explained. They're extracting something from the gravitational fields themselves. Every system they've hit has lost its natural gravitational coherence. The planets are drifting out of orbit, the stellar mechanics are breaking down. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. They're harvesting spacetime itself. Exactly. And Earth, with our artificial gravitational field generators, probably looks like the richest target in the galaxy to them. The room fell silent as the full scope of their situation became clear. Humanity had turned their planet into a weapon to defend against exploitation, but in doing so, they'd made themselves the primary target of an enemy that fed on the very forces they'd learned to control. Dr. Chen, said Chancellor Vextar, who had become a permanent liaison to the Alliance, the Zentari High Council is prepared to commit our entire fleet to Earth's defense. Similar offers came from around the room. Species that had once ignored or mocked humanity were now volunteering to risk everything to protect them. It was a transformation that would have seemed impossible just 2 years earlier. I appreciate the offers, Sarah said, but we need to think strategically. If the Devourers take Earth, they'll have access to our gravitational manipulation technology. They could use it to harvest entire galaxies. She turned to address the entire room. We're not just defending humanity anymore. We're defending the fundamental structure of spacetime itself. Dr. Nakamura looked up from his calculations. Sarah, what if we don't try to stop them? What if we use Earth as bait? Every eye in the room focused on him. Explain. The Devourers are drawn to gravitational anomalies, he said, his excitement growing. What if we give them the biggest anomaly in galactic history? We could coordinate every planetary defense grid simultaneously, create a gravitational resonance wave that spans multiple star systems. That would be incredibly dangerous, Admiral Gentera pointed out. The energy requirements alone could destabilize their entire fleet, Sarah finished, understanding dawning on her face. We're not talking about a defensive operation anymore. We're talking about turning the entire outer rim into a weapon. The room erupted in discussion as representatives from dozens of species debated the implications. Some argued it was too dangerous, others that it was their only hope. But Sarah was already running calculations in her head, remembering the lesson she'd learned during the original Project Gaia. It could work, she said finally, her voice cutting through the debate. But it would require perfect coordination across hundreds of worlds. One mistake, one system out of sync, and we could tear apart the local galactic structure. The alternative is letting the Devourers harvest their way across the galaxy until nothing's left, Jake pointed out from the display. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of beings from dozens of different species, all looking to humanity for leadership in the greatest crisis their galaxy had ever faced. 2 years ago, these same beings had watched Earth's struggles as entertainment. Now they were trusting their entire civilizations to human judgment. We need 72 hours to coordinate the gravitational networks, she said finally. Jake, can you hold them off that long? We'll hold them off, Jake replied with grim determination. Just make sure you're ready on your end. As the communication ended, Sarah turned to address the assembled representatives. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of various other classifications, she began. 2 years ago, the Zentari Empire broadcast our struggles to the galaxy as entertainment. They called us primitive, worthless, unworthy of joining the galactic community. She paused, looking around the room. Today, you're asking us to coordinate the defense of that same galactic community. You're trusting us with the fate of trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. Her voice grew stronger. We accept that responsibility. But understand this, when this is over, when the Devourers are defeated, there will be no more entertainment networks broadcasting the suffering of others. There will be no more exploitation of primitive species. There will be no more galactic powers that refuse to help those in need. She stood straighter. If humanity is going to lead the defense of this galaxy, then we're going to rebuild it as a place where every species is valued, where cooperation replaces exploitation, and where no one ever again has to turn their planet into a weapon just to earn basic respect. The room erupted in affirmative sounds from dozens of different species. For the first time in galactic history, they weren't just allies of convenience, they were united by a common vision of what their galaxy could become. Now, Sarah said, let's save the galaxy. And then let's make it better than it's ever been before. Outside, Earth continued to glow with the power of its gravitational field generators, preparing for the battle that would determine the fate of the entire galaxy. The planet that had once been mocked as primitive entertainment was about to become the command center for the greatest military operation in cosmic history. The Devourers were coming to harvest Earth's unique gravitational properties. They had no idea that Earth intended to use those same properties to destroy them.